Everybody, just recording another shorter class here. Still in Hong Kong, and just wanted to continue. Just so we have a little bit more material to discuss when we have our live class of question and answer. We're just going to continue on for the most part from just the discussion we had last class, just on just the nature of desire and the difference between kind of like tantric desire and like worldly desire. Okay, so let me just work on getting this prayers out here so we can start with our prayers. And again, let's just take a moment to visualize ourselves in wide open space, ground like lapis. Beautiful, comfortable ground, nice to sit on and so forth, and beautiful overarching sky, blue sky, clear blue sky, kind of like blue and blue. And we're surrounded by all sentient beings meditating here together, so we can feel our mothers on our left, fathers on our right, people we love the most and are attached to behind us as support, and people we have issues with in front of us as objects of love, compassion, healing. And moving outwards, sort of rings, mandala rings of concern, and different relationships with all sentient beings. We could just feel that there's human beings from all over the world here with us. The ones we're closest to are closer to us, and then just all the sort of anonymous people around the world are here with us. All living beings in the natural environment of the animal realm, from really, really small insects to big mammals and birds and bees and fish and so forth. Countless spirit beings from the spirit world, all the different planes, like elemental planes, astral and ethereal and so forth. Gods and demigods. And countless beings in lower states of rebirth. Hell beings and hungry ghost beings are here. So we're all here meditating together. And let's look up in the sky above us and in front of us, beautiful Buddha Shakyamuni in his tantric form of Conqueror Vajradhara. And Vajradhara has beautiful sapphire blue or lapis blue energy body of light, in lotus position or Vajra position, and he's holding his crossed hands at his heart in the embracing mudra, tantric bell in his left hand for the feminine side, and tantric Vajra or thunderbolt scepter in his right for the masculine side. And he has a crown, beautiful jewelry, and he's just a young, beautiful man, beautiful like an angel. And we can feel at his heart is a hum letter, H-U-M, or the Sanskrit or Tibetan letter on a sun disk, sort of softly radiating rainbow light. You just feel that white, blue, green, and yellow and red light coming out in all directions, blessing us. And so taking refuge, I and all sentient beings, till we achieve enlightenment, go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. I and all sentient beings, till we achieve enlightenment, go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. I and all sentient beings, till we achieve enlightenment, go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Through the virtues we collect by giving and other perfections, may we become a Buddha for the benefit of all. Through the virtues we collect by giving and other perfections, may we become a Buddha for the benefit of all. And through the virtues we collect by giving and other perfections, may we become a Buddha for the benefit of all. Now from our heart, generating the four immeasurable thoughts of love, compassion, joy, and equanimity, may all beings be happy. May all beings be free from misery and suffering. May all beings not be separated from their happiness, have the joy of enlightenment, sort of life-affirming, positive happiness here and love. And may all beings have equanimity, free from hatred and attachment. So again, sort of beyond our judgmental mind of liking and disliking, but just right down the middle of a very grounded, sensible, open attitude, in particular, a warm and friendly attitude towards all beings. So, 7 limbs. With my body, speech, and mind humbly I prostrate, and make offerings both set out and imagine. I confess my wrong deeds from all time, and rejoice in the virtues of all. Please stay until samsara ceases, and turn the wheel of Dharma for us. I dedicate all virtues to great enlightenment. So at this point now, we're just going to make an offering of the beautiful mandala offering. So we can just, this is kind of like the purified universe at our hearts that we're holding up. And just like a pure land of all beautiful, pleasurable things, we offer all holy beings, in particular to conquer Vajradhara. So again, you can visualize the Vedic universe if you want, with Mount Meru and the 4 continents, and the 8 beautiful offering goddesses and so forth, sun and the moon, whatever you like. But just sort of the main idea is to just have this purified, pure vision of the universe, and have everything being blissful and beautiful, and offering that up from our hearts to the holy beings and to conquer Vajradhara. So we go the ground sprinkled with perfume and spread with flowers, the great mountain, 4 lands, sun and moon, seen as a Buddha land, and offer thus may all beings enjoy such pure lands. We send forth this precious mandala to you, precious gurus, and to all the Buddhas. Om Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamnirtiyami. Doing our Lam Rim prayer, so we get our proper intention of having renunciation, bodhicitta, the awakened mind, and wisdom realizing emptiness as our main pure view or right attitude when we're practicing Tantra. So Jason Kappa's short Lam Rim prayer here. The path begins with strong reliance on my kind teacher, source of all good. Oh, blessed with this understanding to follow him with great devotion. This human life with all its freedoms, extremely rare with so much meaning, oh, bless me with this understanding all day and night to seize its essence. My body, like a water bubble, decays and dies so very quickly. After death come results of karma, just like the shadow of a body. With this firm knowledge and remembrance, bless me to be extremely cautious, always avoiding harmful actions and gathering abundant virtue. Samsara's pleasures are deceptive, give no contentment, only torment. So please bless me to strive sincerely to gain the bliss of perfect freedom. Oh, bless me so that from this pure thought comes mindfulness and greatest caution to keep as my essential practice the doctrine's root for pranimoksha. Just like myself, all my kind mothers are drowning in samsara's ocean. Oh, so that I may soon release them, bless me to train in bodhicitta. But I cannot become a Buddha by this alone without 3 ethics, so bless me the strength to practice the bodhisattva's ordination. By pacifying my distractions and analyzing perfect meanings, bless me to quickly gain the union of special and set and quiescence. When I become a pure container, through common paths, bless me to enter the essence practice of good fortune, the supreme vehicle of Vajrayana. The 2 attainments both depend on my sacred vows and my commitments. Bless me to understand this clearly and keep them at the cost of my life. By constant practice in 4 sessions, the way explained by holy teachers, bless me to gain both the stages which are the essence of the Tantras. May those who guide me on the good path and my companions all of long lives, bless me to pacify completely all obstacles outer and inner. May I always find perfect teachers and take delight in holy Dharma, accomplish all grounds and pass swiftly, and gain the state of Vajradhara. Okay, so once we've having sort of made these requests and prayers, feel that beautiful rainbow energies coming down, lights from Vajradhara's heart. So white, green, blue, yellow, and red. It's like a big rainbow coming just all along the audience here of us all sentient beings. And it's all tantric realizations, sutric realizations, all the compassion, wisdom, and power of the Buddhas. And then just feel that conquer Vajradhara starts to shrink and get really small, like a little tiny blue diamond or a blue sapphire or a little piece of lapis. And he comes down to the crown of our head, about the size of a piece of corn or a sunflower seed. As he's made out of pure light, it's very easy for him to enter our crown chakra and descend our central channel in front of our spine and dissolve into our heart. Now again, that's like pouring one glass of water into another. Feel that all the wisdom, compassion, power, all the enlightened mind of all the Buddhas sort of embodied in Vajradhara goes directly into our mind. They're the same thing. And just feel that we have sort of a luminous spaciousness, sort of a gnosis of space, enlightened sort of mind experience here, great bliss, which means a sense of totality and peace, satisfaction and rest, and a great joy, sort of a creativity, positive potential, positive energy. Okay, so slowly coming out of meditation here. Okay, so here we go again, another class here, just on, put my reading glasses on here. Continuing our discussion of Lama Yeshe's book, Introduction to Tantra. Okay, so I just wanted to continue just a little bit with his, he's got a section here called Desire Distortion, and then the Tantric Solution. So the Tantric Solution is sort of a Tantric understanding of desire, like we've been talking about, that corrects our diluted or distorted view of desire, which is a normal worldly samsaric desire and pleasure, right? So, like I said, the previous class, like in his book, he said, although our life is filled with unquenchable desires, all we ever get is dissatisfaction. So in other words, it's in Lamrim that they say this, and again, you see the same thing. I think Saint Thomas Aquinas talks about it, and of course Schopenhauer talks about it. Is that even though every moment of our lives is chasing desires because we want to be happy, the question you have to ask is, if that's our full-time 24/7 occupation, why aren't we happy, right? Like if that's all we do, that's our intention, and everything, all of our energies put into that, don't you think by now we would be happy? Or Pascal, again, always says it's because we're always looking and chasing happiness that we're never happy, right? So the question is, why is happiness or pleasure something we have to chase, that it's not us, it's something externalized to us? And why is it then once we get it, it doesn't work to fulfill us or satisfy us? It just sort of falls through us. So that's the question Lama Yeshe is wanting us to look at. And again, like religions and philosophies all over the world want you to look at that as well, right? So there's also another good, talking about the repressive hypothesis. I remember there's a great quote from the Bhagavad Gita, I think, where it says that the abstinent run away from their desires, but carry their desires within them. So if they, in other words, even if you don't want to chase after desire like a worldly idiot, you renounce it kind of like a religious person, you still have that repressed energy in you. You still have that unconscious longing within you. And then he says, when a person, or a man, but I think the old script is, when a person enters reality, they leave their desires behind them. Okay, so what I think it means in this sense, by what you're leaving behind is this sort of addictive, distorted worldly desire. So in other words, you're chasing it, or you're repressing, don't want anything to do, but it's still within you, kind of contaminating you. Underlying these desires or longing is nevertheless present within you. But when you, quote unquote, enter reality or see the truth, you let go of all that. You leave all that beside you, behind you, I should say. So again, Lama Yeshe says, why do ordinary desires just lead to frustration, disappointment? Why is that? If we don't understand this or sort of get this problem, how can we practice Tantra? How can we see Tantra as a solution if we don't even know what the problem is? Okay, we enter the next part here, which is desire and distortion. Our ordinary desire distorts our perception of the object. It's a delusion. We can think about this as when you study mind and mental factors, we talk about the diluted mental factor of what they call inappropriate attention, which is your mind, when it has an object, a secondary mind makes a judgment about it or construes it, where it takes one little element and blows it up to make it the whole object, right? So in other words, yeah, I mean, it's just like a complete lack of perspective that you get. So rather than seeing the object clearly and sort of seeing its different relative components, you're taking one little thing and blowing it up. So that, the classic case is, let's say when we don't like somebody, the person might have all sorts of wonderful qualities, but the fact that they really annoy you, like let's say, funny example, someone's at work and it really bugs you the way they laugh. They have a funny way of laughing that really annoys you, or something like that. In the office, every time you hear them laugh or giggle, you're like, oh, I just want to hit them. It bugs me so much. But the point is to say, hey, that person's amazing. Not only do their mother loves them, but oh my goodness, they do all this charity work. They're funny. They have these admirable qualities. They have an amazing life. They're just like such an ethical, wonderful, loving person. But doesn't matter because the one little thing of their annoying laugh blocks out all the other stuff. So it's the same thing mostly, of course, we can talk about that where, and again, you can look at this when we make judgments when people are discriminatory or let's say racist or sexist or anything, where people take one negative quality and then generalize it and sort of roll it over the entire person, right? So we can definitely see how we do this in a negative way when we're being angry or judgmental. and catching herself doing this. The idea of even being judgmental when you meet somebody, it's just like you peg them as something. They're this very complex, complicated person with all sorts of wonderful good things and bad things, but you pick one little thing and say that that's the person. That's inappropriate attention. But of course, when it comes to desire or pleasure or bliss, we have an addictive, obsessive component where you take one little thing and blow it over. In other words, especially, let's say, when it comes to sex, people get so addicted to this where there's, but that can be the same thing with anything, getting addicted to pleasures of, again, with food or even sleep or something. Everything hinges on this one thing, so to speak. This pleasurable object becomes the solution or medicine for all your problems. All you'll find true lasting happiness in this one thing, even though on a relative level that we know that that's not true. But even like, let's say, to me, like vulgar people, especially male desire, you can be attracted to, let's say, somebody and they have a certain qualities, even sexual appearance, like physical appearance, and that becomes everything to you, right? So Melanie Klein calls it like a partial object in psychoanalysis. I won't get into the vulgar details of one another's sexual desires here, but we can see how our mind does that and exaggerates and judges this kind of thing. So it's almost what Lama Yeshe says here: the more obsessed our desire, the more unrealistic the image of it becomes. We become more and more cut off, and interacting not with the person but our own projected image. It becomes like a quote unquote superstitious interpretation, right? This is how, in psychoanalysis, if you look, this is basically how our I don't want to get it. We could go to the whole thing of sort of neo-Freudian or Lacanian psychoanalysis, but there's a famous psychoanalyst and psychologist, Jacques Lacan, sort of big sort of neo-Freudian theorist of the 20th century. He had a famous seminar called "Women Do Not Exist," right? And what he was saying is that a male desire, it's his contention anyway. It's debated, of course, is that men objectify women so much that what they're interacting with isn't a person, but just an old fantasy image, right? To such an extent that the woman itself doesn't exist. So there's all sorts of great examples of this. Slavoj Žižek, famous philosopher and Lacan psychoanalyst, has a whole book on Hollywood and pop culture and did 2 movies on this, Pervert's Guide to Cinema and Pervert's Guide to Ideology, where he shows a lot of this. And an old Alfred Hitchcock movie, like if you see Alfred Hitchcock's movie Vertigo, which is a classic movie in the 1950s, you see how Jimmy Stewart's character falls in love with this woman and has this completely fantasized version of her. And what's interesting is when he meets, I don't want you have to watch the movie and see, but when he meets the real, more unattractive, vulgar woman that the person is, he dresses her up as his fantasy, right? It's quite something. And what, this book was showing, Jesus' book, is like, this is the Lacanian idea that the woman as a person doesn't exist. They become just a fantasy object. So we know this. We don't have to go into too many more details about this, but this is the tendency of our worldly mind to exaggerate all these characteristics of our worldly desires, right? And this is where the suffering comes in, is that it's completely removed from reality, right? You can't. This is why in sutric meditations on sex, they don't want you doing so. And again, you can just think of teenage monks being all horny and all together, and they're dreaming and fantasizing about beautiful women, and then the sutric thing is like, oh, don't think women are beautiful because they also go to the bathroom, they go poo, and they get sick, they throw up, and they barf, and oh my God, it's yucky, and they have their period, And so on one level, you think, well, it's a little bit misogynistic, but on another level, what you want to do is have a realistic view that people are people and have good things and bad things about them, clean things and unclean things about them, and that they're not just a fantasy object that you're projecting all of your desires and longings onto, which is, of course, I remember being a teenage boy that I did that, with whatever beautiful models or anything like this. You have this kind of fantasy picture, and that even if you met them in real life, you wouldn't see them as a person. You'd have a completely superstitious, exaggerated view. And we can do this with things like food as well. Like, let's say, oh my goodness, I read about this incredible 5-star Michelin restaurant here in Hong Kong that has the best noodles and whatever, and everyone on Instagram says it's the best. And then I go there and it's so. Then I'm so disappointed. And I can't believe I paid this much money. It's not that good. And I wasted my time coming to this restaurant. I waited in line 45 minutes to get in. And it's not good noodles. Ugh. And then you're kind of like, so I had this fantasy idea, like looking at my phone, all the pictures on Instagram of these noodles. I can't wait. And I order it. And then I'm like super disappointed. Or we do this with vacations. You get all built up. Oh my God, can't wait to spend this time in Tuscany. And it's like, well, it rained and it wasn't that great and everything was overpriced and too many tourists. And so there's always this gap between our superstitious, attached, worldly, desirous mind and how reality is, right? So we're always overestimating. We're forgetting the object in ourselves, the fact that they change all the time, they're relative changing things, and feel that we will get eternal, everlasting happiness or pleasure from the object. Okay? That this permanence will give us the state of satisfaction our dissatisfied mind is longing for. Okay? So, in other words, just like Pascal says, this is an entire setup to always be dissatisfied, right? So, my mom always had this little quote of like New Ager little quotes that she had in the house, and one of them was kind of like, expectations are prearranged disappointments, right? You can see this. So projecting a false view of permanence onto objects isn't done consciously. Our understanding of all of this is strictly intellectual. It's not from our heart. So in the sense that we can talk about all this, but we really see that the level we're working at here is almost instinctual. We're very unconscious. When we always talk about how dissatisfied we are and how superstitious our desires are, everyone agrees that. We all know that that's true. And yet in our day-to-day lives, it's completely a disavowed belief. We go through our day-to-day lives as if we don't know this. We get so attached to things and chase after them. And all of them are promising us this everlasting happiness and permanent sense of peace and satisfaction and wholeness that we feel that, again, we're lacking. We're in a state of lack. Right? This, again, what Pascal would say. And this is Hegel and Freud would both say the same thing, where they talk about desire being a quote unquote negativity. Not that it's something negative, but bad in the sense that it's a lack. And that the fact that it's a lack being that it can't be fulfilled. Right? Like Freud even, again, don't want to get too much into psychoanalysis, talks about the difference between a desire, which is something you can fulfill, and a drive, which actually can't be fulfilled. It's almost non-biological. Drives reproduce themselves as dissatisfied energies that turn on their own axis. They're unstoppable and unfulfillable, right? So from a Buddhist point of view, it's kind of like our desires work in a samsaric level, they work as drives, right? They're deeper needs we can't fulfill because in their very basis, they're mistaken, convoluted, diluted things. They're mistakes that we make kind of on an unconscious level. So right from the onset, they can't possibly be fixed using their own logic, right? So although all desires are aimed at bringing us happiness, we nevertheless remain unfulfilled and dissatisfied. We have to understand why this is for us to progress on our tantric path. So how does dissatisfaction work? So feeling incomplete, the sort of sense of unfulfilled, lacking, sense of insecurity a little bit, we are always looking outside ourselves for something or someone that will make us feel whole. Therefore, we chase an object we believe will fulfill our desire, and therefore we overestimate its attractive qualities. We always think at any moment, this will make us happy. This sexual experience will make us happy. This shopping will make us happy. This food will make us happy. This companionship will make us happy. This vacation will, whatever. They call it like shopping therapy. You can think again of all the different ways we self-medicate for our sufferings in samsara, right? So, but nevertheless, so Lama Yeshe says, just like Schopenhauer would say, if we can't possess this object of desire, we get more and more desperate and distraught. And once we do possess it, we become disappointed because what we fantasized about and what we now have are two different things. Okay? In other words, for the longed or dreamed image is permanent and complete, ever satisfying solution of our deepest problems, but we don't get this when we get our object of desire. Okay? Rather, we just get a changing, imperfect, incomplete, impermanent, relative thing, just like we ourselves have. So we feel cheated and disappointed. I mean, this is the thing, I don't want to get into Lacanian psychoanalysis, but where he'll say, Jacques Lacan, this idea, and Freudian idea of castration, which creates desire as a lack. Anyway, it's a lot, whatever, we're not talking about the Freudian theory here, but it's kind of interesting what he said, that it's on this fundamental level, object little a, like mathematical object A, you could say object X, is this idea that on this deepest unconscious level, something's missing. Something's missing in our lives to make us feel like we're lacking something and not whole. But what Lacan always says is that on a childish level, when this lack's first created, when we're separated from the mother, we're sort of taken out of this being one with the mother, being one with the universe, and so we're separated and feel lacking, that we need to be fulfilled, made whole, complete. There's this idea that this is almost an injustice or a crime. There's a kind of a primordial thing that's been stolen from us, right? That's not fair. So there's this kind of thing, that this lack, it's a hungry lack, but there's almost like sort of a moral quality to it, that it's a crime that must be righted, or an injustice that must be, it's like somehow something's owed to me. A happiness is owed to me. It's almost like I've been kicked out of the Garden of Eden. So I'm looking everywhere in this, but it's also since I feel something's owed to me that has to be redressed. That's, of course, Freudian theory. But you can see that this lack, the way we approach this lack in life, like Schopenhauer says, in a very, very negative way. Like Hegel would say that this lack, because it's a lack, it's almost like a state of non-being, and so it equals death. So this lack has within it a death anxiety. And Freud will talk about this being a death drive in his later philosophy. So the point is, how we see this samsaric lack as a negative thing. So I like to say, from a tantric point of view, we can talk a little, more later about this. One of my favorite philosophers, Jodela's, in his great book he did with his friend and colleague Felix Guattari, Anti-Oedipus, which is a critique of sort of Hegelian and Freudian idea of desire as a lack. They say in Anti-Oedip, he's like, why does desire have to be a lack? Like, if it's a lack, we end up getting into castration complex and the Oedipal complex and family, the family figures and the mother and father and the state and violence and the individual versus collective and all this negative stuff. And they're like, what if we saw desire as a fullness? What if we just saw desire as manifestation or creativity, as joy, right? And they get this from Spinoza, because the two great head-to-head brilliant philosophers on desire, you have Hegel, which is the dominant view of desire, which is desire is always a lack. You get this in Freud too. But Spinoza, one of my favorite philosophers in the 1600s, famous Jewish Dutch philosopher, he said that conatus, or desire, is actually expression, or something manifesting almost a life force. So there's no lack, because everything is divine, everything is God. It's just how it's expressing itself in the world. Right, you as yourself expressing your conatus or life force is a positive expression of your own energy. So there's nothing lacking, right? And what he said is Spinoza says is when we see ourselves as a lack, we are destroying our power. There's no such thing as a lack, but if we convince ourselves that way, we get into what he says, sad thoughts, rather than joyful thoughts of creativity, exuberance, linking up, being one with the world. We start constricting inwards and losing our power with sad thoughts, right? With reactivity. And then literally he says, like your conatus, your life force, you're snuffing it out. So in a lot of ways, when we're talking about a lack here in a tantric level, we don't want that reactive lack. We want a positive fullness, right? Creative power, right? I sort of like that distinction, to be honest. So anyway, question, Lama Yeshe, is what do we blame for our unhappiness? when we're unhappiness and dissatisfied, we always end up blaming the object. If only this, if only whatever, I didn't get enough of this. If only if it was otherwise, if only this was better than it promised itself to be. If only, if only, if only, and we're dissatisfied. In other words, it's not me that's the problem. It's my object of desire that's the problem. Motivating me to chase it, I catch it. It's not enough. It's not what I wanted. It's used up. It goes away. That's the problem, not me. So we're always looking for replacements and corrections for this, and we have a vicious circle. So because of this, we have no happiness or peace of mind. The tantric solution to this is a complete transformation of our ordinary vision. It's how we see desire that ends up being transformed or changed. Okay? The same energy that propels us from one unsatisfactory situation to another is transmuted alchemically through Tantra, so making lead into gold, right? And I do suggest we'll look at it when we look at Rob Priest's book on the sort of tantric psychology or psychology of Tantra. We look at almost the Jungian alchemical analogy here of what Tantra does is alchemically transforms our worldly desires into this more fullness of tantric desire. Okay, so with this, through our alchemy of Tantra, all of this gets transformed into a transcendental experience of bliss and wisdom. The practitioner focuses on penetrating the brilliance of blissful wisdom like a laser that cuts through these sort of diluted projections of our desires. The confusions and conflicts are destroyed by this blissful wisdom. The energy of desire harness, instead of increasing our dissatisfaction, destroys its very cause, which is the fundamental ignorance of reality, just like fire burns wood that gave it birth. Tantra, which is the bliss arising from desire, expands the mind so that we overcome our limitations, whereas normal desire narrows or gives us a tunnel vision of attention and increases our obsessions for more or better pleasures. We become intoxicated and we lose our awareness of totality and sink into sort of a dull stupidity or obsession or an addiction. So I like that. And again, it would almost be like Spinoza's idea of joyful thoughts of expanding a fullness desire rather than a constriction with a desire as a negativity or a lack, right? So like this, bliss arising from desire expands the mind so we overcome our limitations, whereas normal addictive desire gives us tunnel vision. So you can see this, like, can we have desire? Can we enjoy things in an expansive, inclusive way, like almost like sharing it with others, having an open heart? Or do we have a narrow, attached, clingy, tunnel vision, addictive view towards things? You can check on just how you feel with your desires. Are you clear? Like my first teacher, again, Kelsing Tarchin, always said, how do I know something's delusion and how do I know something's kind of wisdom or more mindful thing? And he said, like, when you're, like, the difference you see between being angry, self-cherishing mind, or more wrathful with a mind cherishing others. And he said, if you have a wrathful mind where you're being forceful with someone, but for their own benefit, when the situation's over and you go away, your mind's very clear. You're still kind of relaxed. It's intense, but you're relaxed, and you can remember every detail of the situation, what you said to the person, how they reacted, what they said. When you're angry and you lose it, when people say, well, what happened? You're like, well, and then it's like you can't remember the details, right? It's all kind of woolly or whatever because you were just tunnel vision absorbed in that delusion. So it's the same thing with desire. Can we have desire with this open mindfulness? Or does it have to be this tunnel vision where we can't see the object clearly, we just see our own delusions? So one thing that's difficult, like Jacques Lacan talks about jouissance, jouir in a psychoanalytic or Freudian sense, and jouir means in French enjoy, but it also means to have an orgasm or to come, basically. So he said most of our issues or the way our desire works is jouissance, since it's a tension release. Tent release. So he says we're like this even with our own issues and suffering, which is why we can't get better a lot, where we're addicted to our symptoms or addicted to our own dramas and sufferings. So when we go into therapy and see that these things are only causing us problems, we still don't get them up because we're getting off on them. We have sort of like a substitute enjoyment we're getting from our suffering rather than letting go of the suffering and going to a real happiness. So he says you're in this addictive cycle of attention release. So like I'm fighting with people or having issues or all my dramas and it's tension, tension. I'm getting off on them. Like even when I'm telling my dramas with my friends and going over everything, I'm getting off on that. And I'm suffering because of it, but it's tension release. Imagine having a pleasure or bliss where there isn't that tension, where it's an openness and a relaxation. I mean, can we even think of that? Right? Can we even think of a non-addicted, non-attached pleasure? See how we're so habituated to this. It's almost really hard for us to see this, right? Okay, so that's the difference. One's clear and one's literally intoxicated here, right? Okay, so our mind contracts around the object and we grasp at it more and more for satisfaction. And we're more and more removed from reality. We're just focused on our fantasy image of it, right? We become more and more unconscious. And again, we're in our fantasy space, not mindful for the world. We're in ourselves, not open to the world. When we become awake, it's all gone and we are dissatisfied again and again. It's like we have a dark, clouded ignorance. There is no mindfulness or no light, sort of clarity in this situation. So Tantra is about unifying pleasure with light or gnosis or awareness. It's the unity of the two poles of male and female, blissful energy and penetrative non-dual wisdom. These have to come together to experience the fulfillment of our deepest nature, Buddha nature. So this is not our present habit. So we have to work hard at this. Dullness and confusion is deeply ingrained in us. It's habitually ingrained. And of course, as Buddha and a lot of Greek philosophers would always say, is that your habits become your character becomes your fate. It ends up sort of disclosing what your life is like on a day-to-day basis, right? So these things are deeply ingrained in us, so we can't immediately transform them. We have to work at our skill level, our emotional level, and mental capacity. Otherwise, we will bite off more than we can chew, and we will have more confusion, more suffering. So this isn't easy, which is why it is a path. And we have to, we'll see this with Rob Priest's book, we have to be very honest and very careful with this. Because the point is, this stuff works at basically like an unconscious level. And so we're always, especially when we start Tantra, we're running miles ahead of our actual practice, thinking we can be better at this than we really are. But the fact is that these, these deeply from the time we're child and even past lives, deeply ingrained obsessional, addictive habits are very, very hard to change. So one of my old friends in grad school when he did philosophy was a real big fan of Greek philosophy, and one of his big mantras he always said loved is never underestimate the power of habit. We can see that giving up habits is really hard. Losing weight, quitting smoking, getting up early in the morning, exercising, all these things are really, really hard to do. It takes a lot of time and a lot of practice. And with this, because it goes to our desire, like all these great religious people, philosophers would say, it's the core of who we are. So it's the most intimate, vulnerable, special, and unique place of us. And it's full of delusions and trauma and fantasies and everything else. So purifying this, straightening out this, working at this level, very subtle, very difficult, which is two things. With Tantra, you need a teacher. It's almost like you need a therapist, and you need a support group of Sangha friends that you trust. Because when we go into this place, there's so much delusion and trauma and suffering. It's very hard work. Self-overcoming is the hardest thing you can do. And overcoming our attachments and leaving samsara, it's the quote unquote capital G, capital W, great work. It's the hardest thing you do. And you know what? You can't do it alone. You need a teacher, you need spiritual friends, and you need the Buddhas to help you through this because it's so difficult and so dangerous. So Tantra is the Nietzschean thing of the rope stretched over the abyss where it's not attached to either side, and you're the tightrope walker walking over it, you're going to fall off. This can be the quickest, most powerful way to enlightenment, like the Dorje Vajra scepter, which is hard as a diamond, quick like lightning, powerful like a thunderbolt. But it's also like kids playing with fireworks. You can blow yourself up. If you're working directly with this energy, your sensual, sexual energy, your erotic energy, your intimate energy with all things, it is the motor of the universe, right? Friedrich Schiller, famous German playwright, says even the worm through desire goes to the throne of God, something like that. I'm paraphrasing. This is a desire. Desirous energy is like the nuclear power plant at the center of the universe. Most powerful energy. You can do anything with it, but you can destroy yourselves and others within it if you do it without wisdom and you do it without skill. So this is it's the most exciting, magical, beautiful work, but also the most dangerous. So you have to be very realistic at the level we're working at and do it properly and under supervision with lots of support and lots of help. Okay, we'll leave that there for that until we go to our next class on our introduction to Tantra. We keep moving ahead with it. Okay, so thank you very much for this. And we'll dedicate this, the blessings of all holy beings, of all the Buddhas, the truth of karma, power of pure spirit intention, bodhicitta. May all of our Dharma wishes be fulfilled and all sentient beings reach awakening. Okay, thank you and see you next time.